So for this final step for the op art exercise, I'm just going to be going into how to save, and then, well, I guess more specifically, I'm going to be talking about how to export these images. So you've been saving them this whole time as you've been working on it as an Illustrator file. That's the native file format that Illustrator works with. You can also save these as PDFs, and it's pretty much interchangeable with Illustrator as long as you have Illustrator editing capabilities checked. But just for this class, unless you have to, just continue to save these as Illustrator files, and they are vector files. So big thing with vector files is these are not really easily read by any kind of web browser. So when you're working with these, if you're not printing them, if you are creating graphics that you're going to post on a website, or you're creating interfaces that you're going to be using for a mobile game or some kind of app, you're always going to have to be exporting these in a different way. So you want to know how to do that, and this is also going to be how you are going to be exporting these to submit to Canvas for this class. So it's really important. You want to always keep these saved as your Illustrator files. Once you're done, then you can go and then export, but you never want to then open up that thing that you exported and try to work on in Illustrator, because it's not going to work. Because what you do when you export, at least in the process that I'm about to show, is you're taking these vector files and these vector objects, and then you're exporting them into a file that is readable by a web browser. So what we're going to be doing for this class is a JPEG, and those of course are pixel-based. And so as soon as you do that, then that file is not something that you can open up in Illustrator and then continue to edit the same way. It is something that you could edit in Photoshop, and there might be situations where you want to do that, but we'll be going into that a little bit later in the course. So first, just exporting. So I have this all saved. I'm ready to submit this for my op art exercise project for this module. So I'm going to go up to File, and this is where, if you're working with CC 2015, 2017, whatever version you're working with of Creative Cloud, it's going to be slightly different than what you would do if you're using CS6. So first, I'm going to show what to do with the more recent versions of Creative Cloud. So what you're going to do is you're going to go to Export, and then you're going to say Export As, and that is going to give you this dialog box. So I'm going to go to JPEG, and then I'm going to say Use Artboards, and then I'm going to just say op art 001 or underscore 01, and to keep that as the name just so I know, and then I'm going to say Export. All right, so now it gives you these different options, and this is where these are the things that you're going to want to set, and this is what you're going to see in the requirements for the exercise. So first, the color module, change it to RGB. Once in a while, JPEGs that are set as CMYK act a little bit funny. So just for this class, change it to RGB. Keep quality at 10. That is fine. Compression method, you can just leave that as baseline or standard. Don't worry about optimize or progressive. If you're in this version, keep the resolution at, actually what you want the resolution to be is you want it to be at screen, so 72 ppi. So what that is doing is that is saying that you are only going to be viewing this on the screen. You're not exporting this to then print out, or you're not going to send this to someone to print out. And if you are wanting someone to print this out, then you do want to go to keep it at high, and then that way you could email that to someone and then they could print it and they would have a high resolution version. We don't need these to be 300 dpi because we are not printing these out, we're just viewing these on the screens, and all we care about is that the file size is going to be 1,000 pixels by 1,000 pixels, or whatever it is stated in the written exercise instructions. So change it to resolution, screen 72 ppi. This makes for a smaller file size as well. And then you can just do art optimize. So this is super sampling, and this is just something that you might change once you're working with a lot of type. And we'll be doing that actually next week. But for now, you can just say art optimized. And then you can just hit OK. All right. So now I'm just going to open this up in Illustrator just so people can see. I have the version that I just exported. I'm going to say open. And now I see, so this is nice and big on my screen. This is its 100% size. It's a pixel-based image. So as you can see, I can't edit anything. I'm not getting any vertexes coming up. This is Illustrator's just treating this like it treats any other JPEG or pixel-based image. I look over my layers tab. I have no layers. So all this is a pixel-based image, but this is perfect for submitting to Canvas. So that's how you do that. If you have, and I'm not saving this because I was just using Illustrator to view it, and I don't want to save any of the weird position changes or transformations that I might have made to this JPEG. So I'm saying don't save here. So that's how you export if you're working with Illustrator CC. Now, if you're working with Illustrator CS6 or CS5, you're going to have to do something slightly different. You're going to go up to File, and it's going to be slightly different in your version. Underneath Save, there's going to be something that says Save for Web, and I'm going to show you pretty much what that window is going to look like by going down to Export and Save for Screens, or Save for Web Legacy. But this is not where this lives in CS6. So in CS6 and CS5, Save for Web is up here under Save. So you're not going to see it under Export. So I'm only doing this because this is how I access this dialog box in this newer version. So just keep that in mind. I'm going to go here, and then you're going to have a very similar looking Save for Web option that you saw in Photoshop if you're using earlier versions. And here are just what you need to select. You want to have it set to JPEG high. Don't worry about whatever these say, as long as one of these is selected. So progressive is fine. Set the quality up to 100 just because I want these to be as high quality as possible. And then this is where the size is. So one of the cool things about Illustrator is as long as you're only working with vector objects and you're not using any pixel-based images in your final image output, so you can use them as references or you can use them as inspiration images, but as long as they're not in your final output, you can scale things up. So if you've only been working with a document that's 100 pixels by 100 pixels, this is where you can actually change this, and you're not going to lose image quality, and that is because of the nature of vector objects and vector files. They're completely scalable. You can take something that is 2 pixels and make it 2000, and you're never going to have pixelization with a vector object. So just keep this in mind. It's always better to start with your document size set to whatever the exercise parameters are asking for, but you can, in some cases, with vector art and vector objects, you can enlarge without losing image quality. So that's where you do that here. Art optimized, this is just asking about the aliasing. So it's saying, do you want us to make lines appear to be totally smooth? And that's where you say yes. So it's going to be a slightly larger file size, but it's going to produce smoother looking images in line work. So this is fine to have it be art optimized. The last thing that's important here is you want to have this clip to artboard selected. If you do not have this selected, what will happen is it will include every object and every image that you had in that workspace area. So you just want to make sure that it says clip to artboard. And then once you're done here, this is kind of the last thing, you can hit done, but all this will do will save the save for web settings. You're not actually exporting anything, so you actually have to hit save. So these are all the settings that you need it to be. Hit save, and then you can go and decide where you want to save these things. And I'm going to call this opart02, just so I don't overwrite my previous one. And now that is essentially exported the same type of file in the same size with the same type of settings that we did with the export as. And so this is the type of file that you want to be submitting to Canvas. You do not want to be submitting your Illustrator file. You want to be submitting the JPEG that you export once you're completely done with your Illustrator file. Okay, so that is it for this exercise, and be sure to review each of these steps if you're having any issues.